actually 4 on the schedule. We'll hopefully Steve will show up. It's an interesting and important topic about the importance of the collaboration component of these data science projects. We always often tend to focus on the data or the technology, but at the end of the day, what ends up making these programs successful or not successful is how well the different institutions or the different members of the team work together. So I think this is an important topic, and I'm grateful for the speakers today. First up is Dr. Kirk Borne of Booz, speaking on crowdsourcing data science for social good.
Okay. Hear me now? Thank you, Ben. Okay, so I'm going to start with a little quiz here. So how many have heard of Kaggle? Raise your hand. Very good. How many people have heard of the data science goal before my lightning thing a few minutes ago? Raise your hand. Wonderful. And how many people have telekinetic powers? Raise my hand. Who did that? All right, so I was just thinking, the last time I was in Chicago was a year ago, and I was here for the American College of Cardiology. Okay, there was a meeting of the American College of Cardiology, and I was just looking at this little list here of all the different sections that exist in this college. And I was just running through it real fast. There's cardio-oncology, there's cardiovascular management, there's women in cardiology, early career section, imaging section, interventional section, peripheral vascular disease, prevention of cardiovascular disease, federal, electrophysiology, early career, all these things. I attended the imaging section. The imaging section of the American, of course, if you don't know what the American College of Cardiology is, it's the premier professional society for cardiologists in the world. I don't know how many tens of thousands of members, but the imaging section alone has over 4,000 members. That one section of all those that I just read and many more I did not read is larger than the entire professional American Astronomical Society. So I'm an astronomer going to Chicago for American College of Cardiology conference. What the heck is going on here? So last year I came here for that purpose to talk about the Data Science Bowl competition we ran last year. So how is it that an astrophysicist stands in front of a bunch of cardiologists talking about data science and machine learning? It's called the power of data to change the world, so much so that we have a common language now that we can go out there and make those changes, be that agent for change in any discipline, working with the experts in that discipline, not claiming to be an expert cardiologist. I know, only I think I know about is about my own heart. We can do this because of the power of human cognition, human curiosity, human creativity and problem solving and critical thinking, all these skills that you have that bring you to the table here as a data scientist. So the applications of what we do crosses so many disciplines, but in a way that we can use that common language of data science, which I like to call transdisciplinary data science, because it transcends our boundaries, to talk about things that are maybe not in our domain of expertise, but we can speak with others in other domains using this common language. And so it has the power of drawing in many people like you and I to solve hard problems because of that transdisciplinary nature of it. Now, my background in astrophysics included many years of crowdsourcing, so this talk is a little bit about crowdsourcing. So how many of you have ever heard of Galaxy Zoo? Some of you have, okay, so it's an online platform to classify galaxies, and millions of galaxies have received several hundred million classifications from the worldwide community, and these people are just random people. They're not astrophysicists. School children, everybody from 4 years old up to 100 years old participate in Galaxy Zoo. And there's a broader crowdsourcing platform called Zooniverse, and one of the premier partners and major parts of the Zooniverse organization, which is a broader category of crowdsourcing science, which we call citizen science, that base is right here in Chicago at Adler Planetarium. So I was really disappointed to see in that earlier talk where the guy went through 90 slides in 2 minutes, that he didn't have a picture of Adler Planetarium. But make sure you get out there and check that out. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so it's sort of in our blood to want to participate in things like this and participate in competitions. Since we were children, we participated in competitions. All right, so we love competitions. But now we can do it for social good. So Data Science School grew out of a passion to change the world. So my work at Booz in Hamilton, I'm the principal data scientist in the firm. We have over 1,000 data scientists. So we're actually have an internal training program, and by the year 2020, we will have 5,000 data scientists, and we have at least 100 positions open every single day. So if you're interested, check out the careers.boozallen.com. And so we've run this Data Science Bowl 3 times already, and we're about to launch the 4th one. The first year was tackled ocean health, and the next one was heart health, which led me to Chicago. And this past year, we did the lung cancer early detection. So that it started before I was even at Booz Allen Hamilton. Before that, 2 years ago, I joined the firm. Before that, I was professor of astrophysics at George Mason University. I never taught astrophysics while I was there. I taught data science all the years I was there. And so grew out of a passion in the firm before even I got there. The data scientists feeling the same sort of passion that you feel, that brings you here, and pretty much all data scientists, like I say, because we have this power in our hands, data science. They said, why don't we have a national competition? Something like the National Spelling Bee, the National Geography Bee. You've heard of these, right? Where people, the kids get up and they spell the words and they win the National Spelling Bee, and then the National Geography Bee is similar except for geography. And so how about a National Data Science Bee? All right, so they call it the National Data Science Bowl. It was launched 3 years ago. And the key thing was partnering with an organization that had hard problem involving lots of data and needed to be solved for societal impact. And at the same time of those characteristics, it had to be a data set that hadn't been seen before in the public domain. Otherwise, the answers would be known. So you can't run an online competition. People can look up the answers. Okay? And it also has to have an objective function that you can measure who wins and who doesn't win, okay? Which means it has to be supervised learning. So once you start looking at all the constraints, it's hard to find those things. And so we started finding partners in the parking lot, among our next door neighbors, just people we talk to, and that's how a lot of these competitions come to birth. If someone says, gee, I got this problem, I got this data set, and so we're looking for future ideas for future competitions. So I'm going to say really quickly what the ones we've done without too many details here, but I do have the poster in the back of the other room now, which you can come see more details at lunchtime. But it's this growth of interest across the world that triggered a phenomenal amount of competition, as mentioned in the numbers during my little lightning talk a couple minutes ago. And so we've taken this. Don't do that. So we took this idea, and the first year we were analyzing ocean health, and ocean health is measured by the healthy plankton in the ocean, because plankton are a processor of CO2 and return oxygen to our atmosphere. So they're a major component of cleaning our atmosphere. They're also an indigenous food source, and they're also a very important component in medicines. And so understanding the health of plankton, and therefore the health of the oceans, is very big and important for the health of the planet. And so the challenge was born, and the winning team from this was not from the United States. It was a bunch of grad students and postdocs from the University of Ghent in Belgium. So we very quickly renamed the National Data Science Bowl to just the Data Science Bowl. And what was fascinating about this competition was it was 120 different classes of plankton. I didn't know there was so much. There were like 122 classes in the competition. There were 120 or so classes of plankton. There was one class which was just defects in the camera, because these are images from underwater images. And the other one, the 122nd class, was, well, generally called by that community whale snot. So it was primarily a morphology contest that is looking at the shapes of things. 120 classes, and I am shocked. I've had students work with classification problems with 2 classes, with 3 classes, and it's pretty hard to get high accuracy with 2 or 3, but with 120 classes? I mean, if you get 1% accuracy, that's better than flipping the coin, hey? But the winning team had over 80% accuracy. Impressive, very impressive. Using a convolutional neural network. It's a funny transition there. The next year we did the heart disease one, which was basically measuring the heart ejection fraction. So how much blood is emitted from the left ventricle. If it's between 50 and 70% of the volume of that heart, the content of that blood is pumped at each pump, that's a healthy heart. Anything below that is a weak heart. Anything above that is hyperactive and a problem heart. So we ran this competition. So it was not only about shape and morphology, but also about sort of shading. Okay, so the shading, okay, so morphology and shading, if you will, is an extra dimension that we're trying to match in order to solve this competition. And what's interesting is we had a wide variety of hearts, children's hearts, adult hearts, and of course a lot of times when you do data science you discover anomalies and outliers, right? So they found one patient who had 2 left ventricles and a few other oddballs like that. All right, and so the winning competition was won by 2 Wall Street quants with absolutely 0 medical training. All right. Now we're smooth. This year we ran a lung cancer competition. Now the lung cancer competition was morphology, shape, and texture. All right, because it's the texture of the thing in the lung that really distinguishes a cancerous tumor from just an infection, all right, or an infection or an inflammation in the heart, which are not cancerous. Okay, so it's that texture. How grainy is it? How ragged is it? Okay, so it was adding more complexity. So the winning teams here, as shown here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just mention briefly, the challenge here is that if you detect cancer late in the process, people die most of the time. This is the leading cause of death from malignancies in the United States. If they do not catch this early, then pretty much your life is over. So low dose computerized tomography, which is just imaging of slices through the lung, is really best for early detection and then their better chance for survival. But there's a 96-point-something% false positive rate. That is 1 out of every 30, or I should say it this way, 29 out of every 30 positive detections of the cancer are false positives. So if you tell someone you have lung cancer, not 29 or 30 times you send people home scared to death, spending lots of money on healthcare and medical tests when they don't need it. All right, let's bring off the stage here. So the winning teams I can tell you more about. Again, someone with no medical background was the first place, and we can talk more about the future. These other teams, so the one thing I forgot to say here is that the first year and the second year, the prize monies were around $200,000. Money was put up by my company. This past year, was so much interest in the broader community that many different foundations, some foundations whose names you probably know, in the Data Science Fellows Program, were falling all over themselves to offer the prize money. So the John and Laura Arnold Foundation put up a $1 million prize for this past year's competition, and we're looking for something like that probably going to happen again in the coming year. And so that's it. Come talk to me at my poster. We're looking for ideas, maybe not for this year because we're closing in, but for future years, and can come talk about how you can contribute and the ideas you have to increase the impact of this competition. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirk. We're going to have time for questions here, but as Kirk pointed out, he has a poster, and I encourage everybody to
find me there.
Our next speaker is Chia-Kai, who's going to speak on lessons learned from using data science to empower change agents across data silos, and he's from DSSG.
It's hard to speak at Kirk with so much energy in his voice. So I'll try to speak louder. I'm Chia-Kai Liu, and I'm from Taiwan. I'm going to talk about our experience about an uphill journey toward the data nirvana. Actually, it's a battle. It's an uphill battle. And my topic will be about change management and empowerment and cross-sector collaborations. In Taiwan, we have 3 major and intertwined problems of course, we all want to use data for social impact to make real change. But in order to do that, we need some good policy and strategies. In order to have that, we need people with talent who can detect the patterns or find the right solutions or the hard evidence to make change. So how can we do about it? We started our program. It's a pro bono program. It's called Data for Social Good, very similar to the DSSG here and around the world. So we are a platform. DSSG is a platform to connect the government, the civil society with the good fellows from the society with the data science skills. Just in case I run out of time, so I'll just go to the conclusions first. Yeah. So we've been running over 3 years, and the common challenges we have faced is first one is there are a lot of change agents in different fields, but they usually work alone. They do not fit in the culture, the organizational culture. So one of our challenges is how to connect and empower these change agents and help them do their job better. And the second one is about circle of trust. In each field, they have their own circle of trust. How can we overlap this circle and create a bigger one? That's the second challenge. And then we are the outsider, right? So how can we mix the strategy about inside out and outside in? It all depends on the project. So that's a challenge. Of course, there's what kind of data science technique we should use for each project. But that's pretty standard here in this conference. And the last one, the life after the project. How can you go from a proof of concept eventually to the standard operational procedure, from POC to SOP? Yeah, I'm going to give you an example about that later. And according to our experience, we have to be for this kind of program, we have to be the enabler, the facilitator, and also the translator among different fields. That's our job. And for the onboarding, so we just try to be as harmless as possible. So we always call, let's start an experiment. So we can start a pilot project with the insulated lab environment. Or you will see the results first, and if you like it, you can release to the public or put it into the production. And we have to help these change agents to, first we have to start with quick wins, and then we will work together toward the long-term gains. A little background about the DSSG. We were started by DSP, my company. It's a private sector company, but we also have partners from the academia and the civil society. And of course, the objective of this program is very similar, just to use data for social good. The progress within this program alone it has been in progress for 2 years. We have done projects in agriculture, environmental protection, education, healthcare, domestic violence prediction, as one of the data fellows presented their findings yesterday. And we've done projects for 6 cities around the nation. Our approach is it's called a multi-stakeholder partnership, MSP. So for each project or to solve a big social problem, we have tried to do a stakeholder landscaping, and we try to get everyone on board. So everyone has some pieces of information, so we can work together to have the full picture of the problem. We use data for dialogue, and then if we're lucky, we can have some collaboration. These are the tools we've been using. Fellowship is only one of them, but it's a very important one. It's in the middle. So you can, from the left side, it's just some loose, very casual engagement, immersion kind of tools we can use. And on the right-hand side, it's more serious, and then eventually we can do some impact investment to make real change. We have changed the budget allocation for government agencies, and also have some corporations that will sponsor the long-term projects to make social impact. So we have limited resources, so we have to be very picky about the projects we work with. So these are our criteria. Of course, first is of course it has to be a high impact potential. It has to have high impact potential. and already have data. And also, in order to make change happen, the organization applicants, they have to commit a dedicated liaison for this project, or the project manager from their side. So just make sure everything we need, they will get our coordinate for us. And then for each project, we need the executive support from the organizations or the government agency. And I make them promise, we made them promise, they will adopt the results, the findings, if the results are good. And we are, like in many talks here, we will try to scale up our efforts. So we will pick projects based on the scalability. So if we done, for example, we done a fire risk model in one city, so we can duplicate its success to the other city. Or the domestic violence prediction, as we showed yesterday. Let me give you an example. This is an example, 3 years in the making. It's not a 3-month project. It's 3 years in the making. Emergency root cloudiness is a constant thing in Taiwan, especially in the city of Kaohsiung, which is the south side of the island. The city has a population of 2.7 million people, roughly the same as Chicago. And so this is during a peacetime. And this is wartime. There was a gas explosion about 3 years ago. More than 30 people died, and more than 300 people were injured. So how can you improve the quality of emergency healthcare? That's our long-term goal. We start with a very some baby steps. So workshops to discuss, to change ideas and the conversations between the trauma doctor and the EMT teams in the fire department. So they come up with something we call the customer journey, or data using user experience or marketing. We also can use it to develop a data journey. So from the left to right, you can see when the ambulance pick up the patient and then go all the way to the hospital for triage and the medical examination. And then, if lucky, the patient can check out. And if it's unlucky, you can check out too, right? So this is the whole data journey. And each dot is a data silo. Then we identify the data silos for this customer journey. From the 119 system is pretty similar to the 911 here. So there are some data there, and then there are some emergency case management database, and then there are some specialized databases. So, but we cannot connect all the dots at that time because of the problem of circle of trust. So we have to start on small projects. We did a prediction challenge to predict the crowdiness of each hospital during a given time. So just like the cargo. And then we have done some fellowship projects for OCA, survival flow. So our focus is on bystander CPR, the effect of bystander CPR. So this is why the OCA is important. This is the result. We find some hotspots of the problems, and the Department of Health in Kaohsiung, they can use it for resource for adjusting their bystander CPR training programs. And then we want to, yesterday there was a session on nudge and the behavioral change. So this is how we do too. We have worked with the Prime Minister, the Premier of Taiwan to talk the talk. So it's a top-down say, oh, this is an important issue. So we should coordinate across the data silos, the organizational silos. And we have the Commissioner of Department of Health here. So they are like the frontline policy decision makers. So they say, okay, we can commit. They see our results. They say, okay, they'll commit more resources to make more changes. So, you know, it's all about change management with data. Thank you.
Thank you, Chia-Kai. Our next speaker is Anissa, did I pronounce that right? And she's going to be speaking on cross-sector collaborations in data science for social good, opportunities, challenges, and open questions raised by working with others. Okay.
That's straightforward. get started while this is opening up. I'm Anissa Tanweer. I'm presenting work that I did with Brittany Fiora-Gartland that's part of an ongoing ethnographic study of the practice and culture. Oh, Mike, I don't have a mic, sorry. Okay, let me try that again. I'm Anissa, and the work I'm presenting today was done with my colleague Brittany Fiora-Gartland. It's part of an ongoing ethnographic study of the practice and culture of data science for social good. And we see data science for social good as being an inherently multi-sector phenomenon that involves collaborations between academia and government and nonprofit organizations and the technology industry. And today I'm just going to talk about academia and some of the contributions we see academic researchers making to these efforts and some of the questions and challenges that are raised by that. So first, one thing we hear all the time in this space is that governments and nonprofit organizations lack the expertise to make use of their data, and so they turn to other more tech-savvy organizations and volunteers to help make sense of that. And in the projects we're looking at, that is specifically coming from faculty and staff and students in universities. I want to talk about this Venn diagram of data science that Drew Conway developed. It's referred to a lot in data science to sort of define what it is. And this identifies three main areas of expertise. So there's hacking skills, which is programming, math and statistics knowledge, and associative expertise. But we see a lot of expertise being required in data science for social good. It doesn't really fall into any of these categories. So for example, data science for social good teams need to understand the contextual provenance of the data. So understanding the stories of the people, of why and how they created the data and everything that's happened to it along the way. Understanding the organizational norms and routines and constraints of their partners, and understanding the social issues they're working on from multiple perspectives, and realizing that different stakeholders have vested interests that are historically situated and sometimes contested. And without all of that, you can end up with projects that are contextually misconstrued, or just organizationally untenable, or socially objectionable to some stakeholder communities. And in other words, we run the risk of lapsing into what Evgeny Morozov has called technological solutionism. So importantly, these skills that I'm talking about all require understanding the experiences of the people who are involved in and affected by data science for social good efforts, and are best gained experientially as well. And so if we had a Venn diagram for DSSG, we might add another circle to it that contains that kind of experiential knowledge. And that's not anything new. There are a lot of tried and true approaches that I think apply to this, such as participatory design and action research and user experience studies. There's a great workshop yesterday on human-centered data science that I hope at least some of you were able to attend. And so that is great, and I think everybody recognizes the need to do that. But in every data science for social good program or project, I think that there's still a big open question about how to actually integrate that expertise in a really meaningful way, especially on very short time scales. Another thing that partners are often looking for is free labor, mostly from students, and that's one benefit of working with academics. But that also comes with its own set of challenges. We have, on occasion, had stakeholders from governments and nonprofits feel that some of the solutions that students propose might be a little bit more complicated than what they needed or what they had the capacity to really absorb. And at the same time, sometimes students are learning things about and with and from their data that might not match up with the expected results of their stakeholder communities. So I think we need to recognize that there is this dual mandate of a university to teach, and that pedagogical goal needs to be balanced with the project objectives, and finding the right balance is also an open question. Everybody in this room is probably already aware of a lot of the things that can go wrong in data science, especially given how trivial it can be to de-identify data, and the biases that inevitably get baked into our algorithms. And so, we know stakeholders oftentimes are, rightfully skittish about not being able to anticipate all of the possible implications of their work. And so at a recent conference, something like this one, one administrator kind of had this very pragmatic advice for her counterparts higher conscience. And that means working with people who, I don't mean that cynically, it means working with people who are trained to think about these possible ramifications. And universities can be an attractive partner in that. One of the reasons being that we have these institutional review boards, or IRBs, that are supposed to review all research that involves human subjects and make sure that it's being conducted ethically. And so that's great, but I think we also need to recognize that universities and IRBs aren't a panacea. They can't anticipate everything, and in fact, IRBs are really struggling to keep up with the changing times. And so researchers like Salam Barakas and Helen Nissenbaum have talked about, we might need to possibly totally revamp sort of the concepts that we use as the ethical gold standards, thinking about human subjects research. So we've always relied on anonymity and informed consent as those gold standards. I don't have time to get into their arguments, but this is great work that I would refer everybody to. And in that, the main point is that we need to avoid using universities as sort of rubber stamps of approval and use these kinds of efforts and collaborations as opportunities to improve and evolve the standards that we do have within the academy. Experimentation, or the culture of experimentation at universities, is another thing that partners can get out of collaborating with them on DSSG projects. So, in the technology sector, failure has come to be seen as largely something that's a beneficial stop on the way to greater success. Likewise, in science, failure is, there's always something to be learned from failure at the very least. Whereas in government, if a project or program fails, then budgets can get cut and people can get fired, and elected officials can get unelected. And so one of the things we hear from governments who are interested in doing this kind of work with academics is that it helps them sort of defer and manage the risk of failure in trying something novel and new. But likewise, we need to strike another balance there and figure out how to do that, knowing that the more sort of scholastic take on failure, that there's something to be learned. In some cases, an academic partner might be happy to publish a result of something that they've learned, even if they didn't, instead of necessarily pushing to the finish line an implementable solution that a partner really needs. So that's something to take into consideration. The final thing I want to talk about is this sort of perception of academic institutions as a neutral player. So for example, there's a project in the works to create a shared data repository of transportation data that would include both public data from the transit agencies in the area, but also data from private transportation companies. And under most circumstances, those transportation companies wouldn't dream of sharing their data with their competitors. But the hope is the academic researchers are trying to position themselves as sort of a neutral intermediary that can safeguard the data and make sure that competitors are only able to query what they've all agreed to seeing. But I think it's reasonable to ask, if universities can actually maintain that perception of neutrality as they get more and more entangled with the interests of other sectors. And so, there's sort of increasingly cozy relationship between academic researchers and technology companies has already been questioned by some people who see that as a conflict of interest. But I also think it's reasonable to, there's a reasonable argument to be made that those kinds of partnerships are really essential to understanding the increasingly data-mediated nature of society. Figuring out what the appropriate boundaries are is still an open question. This is just a summary table of some of the things we've talked about, and I think the thing I want to end on is just, figuring out the answers to these questions and how we do this and how we find that fine balance in all these questions. It has implications for the success of individual DSSG projects and efforts, but I also think that it has implications for how we organize society and the roles of all of these sectors in general as they evolve in the 21st century. So that's all. Thank you.
Is Scott here? Scott's the next speaker, but I don't know. Scott. Steve, sorry, Steve. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Scott called, said he wouldn't make it, and asked me to step in. So, no, okay, no, I was asked to just.
All right. So our next final speaker is Steve
Philpott.
Philpott, and he's going to talk about running the Civic Tech Challenge competition.
Hello everyone, I don't have slides, and I don't know the logistics of this actually. How long do I have?
10 minutes, I'll give you 5 minutes.
10 minutes, great, thank you. I am a Civic Tech blurred. A blurred is black nerd. I say that because I live next door to one, so don't feel bad about it. It is a true movement behind folks who are urban planners, economic development, passionate people to lace technology into our movement to change our cities. My focal point here in Chicago is smart cities. We want to teach not just Chicago, but the rest of the world how to focus technology on distressed areas and take them to not just what they think they used to be or what they could be given what we have done traditionally, but what they can be with wearables and autonomous cars and additive printing and drones and all of these other edge technologies that are truly accessible, right? I had a conversation. I love my job, first of all. I do some really cool stuff. I'm on the Array of Things Committee for the City of Chicago. Anybody know what the ALT is, the Array of Things? So we have a bunch of sensors that are up throughout the city that can see, smell, and hear the stuff. Basically, that's what they do. They can see, smell, and hear stuff. We've got plans to put thousands of them up, and this is not unique. There are places in Brazil, Israel, all around the world that have this model for lacing technology into their cities to make them smarter. So my job is kind of, one, to take that technology and boil it down into layman's terms so I can feed it back to entrepreneurs who would be from or for the neighborhoods where we don't typically have economic development. In Chicago alone, we have 40 years of disinvestment on large swaths of a major city. 40 years. There is no way that we're going to take yesterday's path to getting those areas to be available for us in the future. Now, being a technologist, I'm a software architect by design. I come from the world of key punch cards. Anybody know what that is? All right. So I used to use those. You know, you put together about 1,000 cards to have hello come out, right? You drop the stack and you're done. You go back to doing that again. Well, I've come all the way from that point of taking an hour to write code for hello to my 8-year-old creating a great video game in about 20 minutes. Our platforms, our technologies, even our level of understanding. Look at your child when he touches a mouse or when she touches a smart device. They intuitively know what to do. And of course we know there are things that make that happen. But think about what's occurring today. All of those technologies converging on these issues of social justice, economic equality, but who are the folks developing those solutions? They're typically us. We don't experience the issues that we're trying to solve. We see the issues and we think we have the tools, capability, passion, we can make a change. Unfortunately, we design into our system systematic oppression when we're trying to change certain situations from our view, from our perspective. So it's my job to sit on the ALT committee, explain it to communities, and tell them that this is an opportunity. This is a level playing field. These are tools for change in your hands. It's not something where you have to be a technologist to develop the change that you can get out of this tool. It would be as ridiculous as saying that you can only drive a car if you were a mechanic. Right? We know where we want to go with the car. I know what I need to do in this community, and here are the technologies, the tools, the wheels, the oil, the mechanics to get me there. We are capable of assisting in the mechanics of it. We are also capable of lending our passion, but truly, people in the neighborhood have to be activated to utilize those tools in the direction they need to go. So we run, and I have for years run, a Civic Tech Challenge. And what we do is we go out to all the neighborhoods and we give that little pitch I gave a second ago. And we say, so some of you guys have been thinking about it, come to our workshops and we're going to take you through a process of identifying the opportunities along these platforms. And the easiest way we do this is to say, you know what Uber is? Everybody knows what Uber is. And they say, yeah, great. Well, Uber is a type of opportunity. It's a shared prosperity model. It connects technology to people and allow them to interact in a way where I get $1 and somebody else gets $1. Great thing. Well, that is a model that in our neighborhoods, when we've seen ideas come out in the past 3 years, we've seen 160 ideas come out of the communities as tech-enabled businesses that would be for and in the communities. 80% of those submissions were consumer utility. So that's one category. The biggest number that made any sense was retail retrofit. It's where I go and say my traditional business in this neighborhood is going to be a dry cleaner or a chicken shack, but I'm going to deliver my goods with the chicken drum back into the neighborhood, right? So a lot of people are designing in new technologies for traditional businesses. Great economic model for people coming out of the neighborhood because it doesn't require them to be tech savvy. They have to be a specialist in the business they're focused on. Great dry cleaner, a great chicken delivery guy. And then the third thing we're looking at is edge tech. There are, in fact, Mark Zuckerbergs on the southwest sides, minorities, women, all across the board. There's a number that was given by a government agency that I can't recall right now. It was like Workforce Bureau something. And they say if we invested beyond the 1% of venture capital, if we invested in just 10% of the minorities that we don't invest in, they would generate jobs and economic growth equal to $29 trillion, the United Kingdom's GDP. So we're missing the boat on this. And so when you get to fly over Chicago and you see those big deserts, for me, being a Chicagoan, that is the opportunity for the next. So when we run the Civic Tech Challenges, we say, corporations, we need your capability, skills, and passion to meet with that of the residents in the neighborhood because we have the opportunity for the next. What's happened in the past is we've had the opportunity, or we've had fear before we had the opportunity. The best thing I have right now being a Chicagoan is fear with a clear vision for the opportunity. What we have now is just the fear. So the Civic Tech Opportunity takes all these people from these neighborhoods, all of our community partners, they bring forth their best, and aldermen might say, hey, I know a business guy, I'm going to put him in your competition, and we have them run through a challenge, a hackathon weekend, they build minimally viable prototypes, everybody knows what that is, and then those top 10s we put through another filter, and that filter is this. Data is not racist. No one has ever been able to create a piece of data, just one little iota, one data set that is racist. It's our intentions that make it that way. So we tell these folks, you're the 10 guys that probably will make it, and we're going to take you to a go-to-market strategy, but you need to understand this. The data we have in the past is based on perception. It's a historical record of what we know. Now we can combine a number of data sets to create predictive and assistive analytics for these neighborhoods that are relevant to the situations. Predictive in, this is probably what's going to happen with the built environment, this is going to happen with mobility, this is going to happen with the last category, nuisance management, policing, public safety, right? We can build those in. But assistive, this is the hard part. I live in a neighborhood, I've got an issue. I could use some assistance from data from computers with my finances. I could use it with my career path, with my education. I could have something pop up to help me through this process. So then we challenge these people, build your business that has technology laced into it for the next. I challenge you to that. And then we take them through a process with our partners, World Business Chicago, City of Chicago, UI Labs, a number of other geniuses, to get these folks back into those neighborhoods. It's a process that is only possible because of all of you folks now believing that data can be a driver for social impact. Everybody else is following because the geniuses are leading. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about what we do, but I invite everybody to keep doing what you're doing because it's providing hope and leading the change for people to come out of the neighborhoods, to come out of the corporations and work together to change these cities for the better. Thanks.
Hey guys, curious, what age are you engaging these kids at?
Well, see, that's funny, it's perception. I work with adults. We run, yesterday we gave away 140 Raspberry Pis to kids, to teachers of kids for schools. That's what we do, but we want that fiscal clip that happens once you're trained to be filled, and that's what I do.
Awesome. I also wanted to say one other thing. The online version of the agenda has links to papers that were written. There's some really great resources in there, and I encourage y'all to look at them. And that's it. We're done. I'd like to thank the speakers.
I'm in charge of the next session.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, may one, yeah.
You are